If you remember back in May of this year, we had Carl Banks on the Rothenberg Untucked podcast, and it went over swimmingly well. People were very excited, and they demanded, they had to have more Carl Banks. Well, that's what we've done right now. More Carl Banks. Training camp back in the day, 1984. What was it like? Let's find out. So you get to the Giants, big time players there. I mean, you got Lawrence Taylor, you got Harry Carson. I think Parcells was becoming Parcells at that moment where he was becoming that larger than life figure. Is there a moment when you realize, like, okay, this is different? I'm now with I'm not at Michigan State anymore. Welcome to the big leagues.
Oh my God. Yeah, the first day in the building. This is like the most mind-blowing thing ever because I was this naive like boy in Wonderland, like, wow, this is Harry Carson, this is Lawrence Taylor. So I come in the building, I go see the trainers, and sitting outside of the training room is Lawrence and Harry, right? And I'm like, wow. I go up and I introduce myself. I'm like, hello, Mr. Carson. Hello, Mr. Taylor. I'm Carl Banks. And Harry Carson looks at me and he says, so what the hell are you going to do to get on the football field? And that was that moment where I was like, oh boy, this is real. This is like, this guy didn't even really want to say hello other than tell me what you're going to do to be on the field with us. So it was just, that was my like wake up call to like, okay, this is real. And then later on that day, our first practice, Lawrence Taylor practiced faster than I ever played a game in college. I mean, his practice speed was just incredible.
So Parcells is there. I'm sure he's hard on you as he is everybody. Do you have that moment of like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, I got Lawrence Taylor here. I got Harry Carson here. You know, they're already questioning me. I'm the third pick in the draft. The expectations are there. The head coach is coming down on me. Like, did you have that Parcells moment like you hear from so many players around the NFL?
Yeah, my Parcells moment came in training camp. So rookies back then came to camp a week and a half before the vets. The only vets that were in camp were guys that were coming off of injury. There was no other outside linebackers in camp. So if you can envision when drills are run, there are long lines of players just running drills until the next, the whistle blows, and then you go to the next drill. I'm the first and last player in every outside linebacker drill. So I didn't get a break. So, you had lines with 6 or 7 players in it. And then there's my group where it's just me. And so they played good cop, bad cop with me. Romeo Crennel was my linebacker coach at the time. And, they blow the whistle and we're doing these drills. And, Coach Rack would say, hey, take a break, pace yourself. And then Parcells will look over and it's like, why the hell is he on? Why is he taking a break? Get him back in the drill. And it was like, I'm the only guy. And at that point, like by the third day of camp, I was just like, what the hell does this guy want? Like, why did he draft me if he's going to beat me into the ground? And no one was more excited when the vets showed up to camp than me, because I was literally the first and last guy in line in every single linebacker drill.
How much easier do players have it now than when you had it back in 1984? And I can already see like the smile come into your face. Is it that much of a difference?
Yeah, it's dramatically different. It's dramatically different. And listen, I don't begrudge the young players or the new players, because a lot of the changes are for the better. I think the only thing that you would get out of training camps in the 80s, if you had to transport that mentality into today's player, is that you would find out who was mentally tough enough to play the game of football. Other than that, a lot of the stuff was excessive. So I'm okay with the way that the game is. No, I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with limited practice time. I'm okay with how they practice the guys though, but I think they should have more time to develop their players. But all of the hitting, I don't know if it's necessary, and I'm fine with that change.
All right, so I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Probably, I'd have to think the most famous teammate you've ever had was Lawrence Taylor. What was it like? I mean, Carl, he was, and this is before the internet. This is before 24-hour news cycles. This is before everything. He felt like to me, and I was a little kid, but he felt like he was a larger than life figure. Playing next to him, having him as a teammate, having him in the same linebacker meeting rooms as you. Is that accurate? Was he a larger than life figure?
Yeah, he was absolutely larger than life, but he lived up to it in all of the positive ways too. Because I've never played basketball at a level to where I could be on a court with a Magic Johnson, a Michael Jordan, or a LeBron James. Like Magic's a good friend of mine. Isaiah Thomas is a good friend of mine. And just watching those guys and being around them, it's kind of the same mentality. Like they see the game different. Lawrence Taylor literally sees the game different than everybody else. And you sit in awe of what his knowledge and how he sees the game and how it unfolds and his ability to tell us what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. And so like one of the, everybody knows Lawrence is famous for his nightlife, right? But we're getting ready, and this is, I don't think he minds me telling this story now, but we're getting ready for Washington Redskins. That's what they name it at the time. Our biggest rival. And he comes in, he misses half the day. Like, so the morning meetings, he's nowhere to be found, right? So after lunch, we were in our pass rush segment of our meetings, which means that, we're installing what our pass rush is going to be for the game. It's our whole game plan. And there's no Lawrence, right? The lights are off, the film is running. And then he comes in, he crawls up under the table. He's got these dark sunglasses on and he's knocked out sleep, right? So the coaches are running the film and they're breaking down Joe Jacoby and all those guys. And so they're starting to get some questions. Lawrence is knocked out. So he's drawing up our pass rush, who's doing what and why. And he cuts the film off, cuts the lights back off, and the film is going again. And you could just see the coach getting irritated, Lamar Leachman. And so he just stops the film, he cuts the lights on, and he says, "God damn it, Lawrence, you would think you would be awake for something like this. This is our pass rush, right?" So Lawrence is cranky. He sits up, he takes his glasses, he puts them on his head, and he says, "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "Okay, cut the film on." In literally, Dave, 2 plays. He looked at 2 plays and he says, "Cut the lights on." He gets up, walks to our whiteboard or chalkboard, draws up our pass rush, tells us why this is working. These are the pass rush games we should be running, and this is why. After two plays. Now, it took a coach an hour and a half, and he still hadn't kind of articulated what Lawrence did in two plays. He looked at it and told us why we need to have this type of pass rush game. And he cut the lights off and says, "Can I fucking go back to sleep now?" It was a moment of genius because that is the game plan that we used in that game.
That's awesome.
But it was phenomenal. Like the way he saw it, like he saw in 2 plays what we had been trying to figure out for an hour and a half.
So this interesting thing about Lawrence Taylor is because everyone thinks just great athlete, great football player, sensational, game player, but didn't really bring it between Monday and Saturday. It almost makes it sound, Carl, like when you discuss him, like he was almost a football savant, and I think that really gets lost. Is it fair to say that he was, or I can see your face? Is that not fair? Yeah.
No, I think you can call him a football savant, but the thing about the fact that he didn't bring it Monday through Saturday is totally erroneous. Now you can say he wasn't punctual on meetings, or he slept through meetings, or he was hungover in meetings. Yeah, that all applies. But here's the thing about it: when practice started, he was the first one out, and he practiced harder than anybody I've ever seen. Like, and you can ask to a teammate. Like, the stories may vary as to what he was like in meetings, right? But when practice started, especially if it were the defensive practice, the stuff we had to do, he was game speed. If offense was on and he was sitting off by himself, he could be throwing up in the trash can or not. He could have just been drinking water. It doesn't matter. But if, like, just say, for instance, if Parcells wanted him to get Jumbo Elliott ready for Bruce Smith, right? He would tell Lawrence, I'm going to need you to get Jumbo ready for Bruce Smith. So it would be game speed for Lawrence against Jumbo Elliott, just to make sure Jumbo was ready. So there was nothing he wouldn't do in practice. They never had to beg him to do anything. And his effort was just, off the charts when it came to practice. And again, because he saw the game differently, and it wasn't like game plans weren't important to him, because he was the last guy to leave the reservation in terms of doing his own thing. Like, he could, you gave him you gave him kind of a template to work within, and he made everybody better. So if it called for, two men to be in a pass rush together, and he was one of those two, let's say it was him and Leonard Marshall, they worked out what they were going to do, but it was within the framework of what we needed them to do.
So it sounds like it's really unfair. Like, it sounds, and he's still revered and godlike in New York, but it really does sound, Carl, like there was this belief around New York that he showed up on Sunday, spent 3 hours, and went and did his own thing. And it doesn't sound like, in fact, that was the case at all.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Like, he did show up on Sunday, and he did 3 hours or 4 hours, and he did it better than anyone else. And then the other days of the week, it's open to interpretation as to what you would consider a commitment to his employment. But I don't think anybody in the locker room would ever dispute his commitment to the team. And listen, the results speak for themselves. I mean, I don't have to defend anything about Lawrence Taylor, the football player. And whatever the stories are written about him off the field, that's, that is what it is. But as a football player, there's nobody better, period.
86 season, and I agree with you, by the way, 86 season. Did you know going into the year that was going to be a special season? Was there a moment during the year where you said to yourself, you know what, this is going to be our season? Like was it the second Washington game? Was it after you lost to Seattle? No?
No, it was walking off the field in 1985, walking off of Soldier Field in 1985 after we lost to the Bears. We knew we were going to win it the next year. We were really pissed off. We were pissed off we lost, but we were pissed off because we found out there was another level that we could go to, that we had to go to. And I think walking off the field and in that ride back home, we knew that there would be nothing that would stop us from being Super Bowl champions next year.
Let's go back to the 85 game. The Bears, Landetta misses the punt, and I've talked to him many times about that and how that haunted so many Giants fans. You think you win that game if that doesn't happen, or were they just a better team that day?
I think it gave us a better chance to win that game. Because we had a good game plan, but like that play kind of put us behind the eight ball, and you can't be, playing catch up against a team like the Chicago Bears. And it's similar, and you're a Giants fan, but if you remember when Jim Fossil took the Giants to the Super Bowl against the Ravens, right?
Sure.
One penalty, one callback of a return changed the complexion of that entire game also. And so it happened, but we knew that there was another level we could go to.
Had you ever seen anything like what New York was actually like after you guys won the Super Bowl? Like I have to imagine that you were rock stars in the city.
Yeah, it was the most incredible time, and you still feel that connection with the emotional connection with the Giant fan base because it had been like 30 something years since they won a championship. This is the first ever Super Bowl championship, but we started to forge that relationship with our fan base probably in 1984. We went to a wild card game. The next year, we went to a conference championship and then a Super Bowl. So we were kind of building together, and the expectations were high. We had guys like Harry and George Martin to kind of remind us that this is for the fans. This is a connection that they've been waiting for this for a very long time. So we're going to make sure that we take care of our fans and acknowledge them because they love what we're doing.
It was a sensational run. And then the '90 team also just a phenomenal run, but different because '86 felt like it was destined. '90, Carl. People ask me all the time your favorite Giants game that you've ever watched. I might say the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers might have been the greatest football game I've ever seen. You were in it. I don't ever think I've seen a harder hitting football game in my entire life. It was, and it ended their three-peat, and they were a great team. And, they beat you guys early in the season 7-3 in that Monday night game. That was as great a football game as I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, that was, and it was all field goals, by the way. And
15-13, yep.
yeah, but that that season kind of summed up the mental resolve of what we were, or our mental makeup, because I don't think there was ever an opponent that we didn't think we couldn't beat. But like when the stakes were highest is when we knew we'd figure out a way to win that game. And like leading into that game, I remember that week where Parcells came in with a suitcase and he's like, "Hey, I'm packing for 3 weeks. So if you're not planning on going to Tampa from San Francisco, stay home because we're going there to win, and then we're going straight from there to Tampa." And that was our mentality. We packed not to come home. We packed for 2 weeks, and we went in. We just knew that we would just keep pounding and pounding and pounding. And they were, the 49ers, for a team that was not a NFC East team, they were probably our biggest rival. And always the Super Bowl during that era always went through San Francisco. Like they were part of either Super Bowls or championship games for both Washington, New York. It was Washington, New York, or San Francisco in the '80s that won Super Bowls. So they always figured in as an out of division rival, but you knew you had to beat them in order to get to a Super Bowl.
Now, the architect of the Giants' defense then was Bill Belichick. I'm a genius, and we've all gone over it a million times about the game plan in the Super Bowl and just crushing their receivers. And I remember Andre Reed just going down and physically being manhandled in that game. But I want to fast forward, to where we are now. Are you surprised? You might be a little just because of the success that he's had, but surprised that Belichick is where he is? Or did you always think there was a chance that we would get here with this guy?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I think so. As a young assistant coach and then a coordinator with the Giants, and I had all of those years with him. I knew there was a chance he could be great, right? And he did not get the head coaching job when Parcells retired, but then he goes to Cleveland, and people were just killing him there. And I spent a year away from Bill in transition from the Giants to another team in Washington, and then to I hated playing for the Redskins, by the way. But then I went to Cleveland, and we had a record-breaking year. And I knew at that point he's ready and he's going to have a ton of success. So everything about him, his approach to the game, his approach to players, told me he was going to be a great coach. And then the period I spent with him in Cleveland kind of solidified that. And I remember having a conversation with Bob Kraft right before Bob hired him, and telling him almost this exact thing. Like, his players will love him. You couldn't find a more dedicated guy. And he's only concerned about football. He's not concerned about entertaining sponsors. He's not concerned about being a writer's best friend. And I'm telling Bob Kraft this. And I said, but if you want a football guy who's going to, get your players playing the right way and winning football games, he's your guy. And he always tells me when I see him that he still remembers that conversation, and it had a big influence on why they hired him.
I want to get back to your youth a little bit. We'll do that in just a second. But it's such a big conversation piece now, and that is it Brady? Is it Belichick? Is it even? What's your mindset? Was it more Brady or Belichick with those Patriots teams?
It's both. But, Belichick will tell you players, good players are all essential for having a good coach. If you got a great player, then they make your coach look good. A bad coach can't make a player look good. So I think it's both. I think they're both equally responsible for their success. And I don't think Belichick has an issue giving Tom Brady as much credit as he deserves, if not all of it. I mean, that's just how Bill is. Like, he's like, players can't overcome bad coaching, So they know that it's good players and it's good coaching and it's a collaborative effort.
Carl, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. I will talk to you soon. You are the best, man.